Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a reality that's honestly pretty shocking. We're looking at what actually happens when the biggest, most trusted legacy institutions, we're talking the absolute giants of the consulting world, start relying on unregulated AI. And, more importantly, we're going to explore how you can protect your own decision-making from the fallout. We all tend to assume that when we hire the biggest names in the business, we're getting ironclad expertise. But recent events, they've shown us that the very foundation of that trust might be built on algorithms that are, well, frankly, just making things up.
Let's jump right into this incredibly jarring quote from a LinkedIn post by Nicholas P., which was recently highlighted in a really fascinating industry analysis. This points directly to a massive failure that went down when KPMG, yes, one of the prestigious Big Four consulting firms, published this highly anticipated glossy report on agentic AI in October 2025. They were out there selling the absolute miracle of AI, but as it turns out, the very thing they were selling was hallucinating the data.
Which brings us to Section 1, when big consultants hallucinate.
To really wrap your head around the magnitude of this problem, just think about the number 40. Out of 45 total citations in KPMG's massive AI report, an absolutely staggering 40 of them were entirely fake. I mean, pause and think about that for a second. You have a global consulting firm putting out a definitive industry report, and nearly every single piece of evidence backing it up literally did not exist. It was just completely hallucinated by the AI they used to write it. No way around it. That is wild.
And the errors didn't just stop at citations either. They really compounded. Half of the core claims in the report were invented out of thin air. The AI even managed to contradict KPMG's very own survey numbers. And in a twist that's almost comedic, it tried to blow smoke by citing a 2019 East Japan Railway press release as concrete evidence of cutting-edge agentic AI. It's just a perfect storm of what happens when human oversight completely leaves the chat.
Now, KPMG definitely isn't alone here. We've absolutely seen this movie before. Deloitte faced a very similar scandal where they fed AI hallucinations straight into a government report. Now, sure, they issued a refund and walked away, but here's why that is so concerning. A refund doesn't unspend taxpayer money, right? It doesn't unmake the real-world decisions that were built on that absolute fiction. And honestly, a simple refund just teaches observing firms that the cost of getting caught is pocket change compared to the permanent damage they leave behind.
Moving on to Section 2, the illusion of trust. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the philosophical difference between trust and assurance. As the analysis points out, trust is fundamentally a belief in your partner's goodwill. Assurance, on the flip side, is what you sell when that belief is gone. But here's the trap you fall into. Assurance only works if you still fundamentally trust the firm that's selling it to you. And right now, we're seeing that foundational trust starting to fracture in a big way.
We've got to contrast our expectations with the actual reality. The expectation of a Big Four firm is built on a 130-year legacy. It's built on 250,000 people operating across 140 countries. It's that core idea that a banker in Frankfurt can blindly believe a ledger from Singapore without ever having to shake the hand of the person who wrote it. But the modern reality? By churning out unverified AI content, these firms are starting to default on that massive global loan of trust. And the irony here is palpable. KPMG's own hallucinated report claimed that integrity was the #1 driver of customer loyalty, literally just months before their own integrity took a massive, very public hit.
And this disconnect totally trickles down to the client level. Directors and corporate boards hire these firms because they believe they're getting the top-tier, unquestionable brilliance of graduates from prestigious global institutions, like the IITs or IAMs in India. They trust them blindly to cover up their own gaps in understanding. But instead of paying for actual human brilliance, they're increasingly paying absolute premium prices for hollow, hallucinated AI outputs.
Which brilliantly illustrates a genuinely terrifying new concept, the human zombie. This happens when consultants or professionals churn out AI tools without truly understanding the background libraries or the processes driving them. They just pass the AI output through themselves, essentially slapping a human face on it. To the customer, it looks like a thoroughly vetted, smart human decision, but it's actually just an unverified hallucination sneaking right in, all because the human operator entirely lost control of their own tool.
Let's look at Section 3, AI in the boardroom.
If human boards are just going to blindly accept AI outputs from consultants, shareholders have every right to ask the obvious question, why not just replace the board with an AI? And we're already seeing this escalation play out.
On the low end of the risk spectrum, you've got Sophia, the humanoid robot who was actually granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, which, let's be real, was mostly a questionable PR stunt. But then look at the higher risks. You have an AI named Mika at Dictator, which could theoretically hallucinate and ruin a whole company. Or take Diela in Albania, an AI where a bad hallucination could theoretically ruin an entire country. The decision-making capacities and the sheer risks are scaling up dramatically.
Keeping those catastrophic, hallucinated risks in the back of our minds, we really need to start questioning some of these blind media recommendations. For example, there have been pieces in the Economic Times suggesting companies should simply install an AI agent to handle complex data privacy laws like India's DPDPA compliance. Based on everything we've just seen about AI casually inventing facts and laws, relying on an automated agent for strict legal compliance is a massive, massive gamble.
That takes us to Section 4, the need for restraint.
The source material heavily argues that we absolutely must embrace a policy of restrained innovation. It strongly warns against the innovation over restraint model, which, as we know, is frequently championed by big tech companies and is often endorsed by industry bodies and government tech ministries like NASSCOM and MITI. But pushing forward at breakneck speed without verifying the output is exactly how we end up with 40 fake citations in a multi-million-dollar professional report.
The golden rule for using these tools is actually incredibly simple, but it is heavily ignored. Human control must remain intact. Whether you're drafting court pleadings, writing complex software code, or generating a consultation report on a massive project, users absolutely must read and understand every single line of text created by a generative system. If you don't do that, you're just inviting a trap.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Securing Independent Audits.
The Association of Independent Data Auditors, or ADI, offers a really strict code of conduct to actually solve this. They enforce principles of true independence. For instance, the scope of an audit must be written entirely independently. The person creating that scope cannot be the auditor themselves, and it can't be the company being audited either. Plus, they mandate rigorous peer review of all DPDPI compliance reports. The whole goal is removing that blind faith and replacing it with real, verifiable checks.
So what's the big takeaway for you here? Here are the actual steps you can take to protect your company. First up, question the gap assessments you receive. Yes, even if they come from the Big Four. Second, factor in the expertise of truly independent auditors who aren't aligned with or influenced by big tech. And third, consider applying data privacy frameworks, like the upcoming DGPSI, to conduct a rigorous review of an audit. Basically, if a Big Four firm just handed you a glossy report, you need an independent body to review it just to make sure it isn't completely full of AI hallucinations. I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to consider deeply when it comes to your own organization's leadership. When you read a report, when you receive expensive consulting advice, or when your board makes a major strategic move, are those decisions truly human, or are they just unverified AI outputs passed seamlessly through a human zombie? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and stay vigilant out there.